Jokanovic leaves Craven Cottage and the Italian takes his place. But I think it's fair to say his appointment has brought, in some ways, mixed reactions. I'll come to you first of all, Liam, as one of your old clubs. Firstly, Jokanovic, did something have to change there?
I think so. I think the manner of the performances as well as the results. I remember the Huddersfield game very clear. There was a lack of fight, and you need that if you want to stay in the Premier League. And, you know, Slavisa's done an incredible job at Fulham, getting them promoted. But even in promotion through the Championship, the Achilles heel was always conceding lots of goals, and they always counted on scoring more goals than the other team, being technically better, being more expansive. When you move into the Premier League, it's a whole different kettle of fish. And I think another problem that Slavisa's faced is in terms of recruitment. Now, for me, I'm an advocate of when you're promoted, you keep the momentum, you keep that squad, that team spirit, that chemistry. When you go and splash £100 million on 12 players, it looks great in a transfer window, it looks great on Sky Sports News, but actually bedding those players in and having that same spirit and chemistry, and we're going back to that fight that you need to stay in the league, those players that have earned that right to play in the Premier League aren't happy now. They're not happy. And I think that's a huge part of, yes, you need to add to your squad, but you need to do it in a way that adds to actually the value that you already have at the club. Well, the other question is, did Slavisa choose those players? I don't think so. I don't think so in the way that the recruitment works at Fulham, and I think there needs to be more of a synergy at every football club in terms of your recruitment. I think that's another problem. You know, they signed 2 goalkeepers on deadline day. Now, for me, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense when you've got a goalkeeper in Bettinelli who's done very well and getting promoted to the Premier League. To me, it smells of a scattergun approach. Let's get as many players in as possible. Let's spend money. Let's look great in the transfer window. We saw with Swansea last year, everyone said what a great transfer window they had. They end up getting relegated. And football is about having quality players. It's about having a chemistry and a team spirit. When you go away to the likes of Huddersfield, you need to really dig in and fight for 3 points, and they didn't seem to have that. Taylor, as I said at the top, a very special welcome to you. Thanks for joining us. As we will on a number of subjects this evening, we'd like your views from across the water. How is Claudio Ranieri viewed, if you like? And what do you make of the appointment? What are they getting?
I understand the appointment because I think you look at... And listen, I don't think any of us here are going to sit here and say Fulham's going to win the title. But he's got the experience of winning. He's got also the experience of being very close in his past. But he's also lived in London, and he's got that... Claudio Ranieri's looked at as this, not God's the wrong word, but this figure that pulled off a miracle. Because everyone back home at the States looks at it and says, wait a minute, Leicester City won? You know, this is the equivalent as the last place. We were saying the same here. Right. But the reality is they did. So when they see this appointment, naturally they're going to say, oh, it's the Leicester City's former manager that won the title. And oddly, they're going to say, oh, well, that means Fulham's going to win. When the reality is Fulham's #1 issue is the cohesion from top to bottom. They made 12 signings. I'm not sure 8 of them made any sense, right? And that was a team that caught my attention, caught everyone's attention, because in the Championship, they played a very sexy way of football, so to speak, soccer as we call it in the States, that all of a sudden you're like, wait, that's in the Championship? That won the Championship? Then they come to the Premier League and they look completely out of depth. I just hope the expectations on Claudio aren't as high as when everyone last saw him in the Premier League.
Interesting, Ollie. I'd like your take on what Shahid Khan said today. He said Claudio Ranieri is risk-free and ready-made.
Yeah, well, he's ready-made, but he's not risk-free because nobody's risk-free. And I think that, you know, none of us, I think, will fall into the trap that we maybe a lot of people fell into when he was appointed Leicester manager. I mean, Gary Lineker, to his credit, has been making fun of himself today with the, you know, when Ranieri was appointed at Leicester, he went, Claudio Ranieri, really? You know, and nobody's going to do that. And I think I think he's a good appointment because he will bring that word that Liam used, cohesion. He will bring, you know, a more conservative approach probably, as he did at Leicester. He'll bring a more solid approach. He'll tighten Fulham up, but he's not risk-free. And he, you know, let's be honest, he will always be, as Taylor was saying, he'll always be viewed as a kind of saint here, and because he was the architect in many ways of the greatest story that there's ever been in English football. But he has had bad times as well. Well, he has had bad times at a lot of clubs. He's
had a lot of clubs. I mean,
he's had a lot of clubs, and
he's had
a few failures, and so he's not risk-free.
But when you look at his resume, he's managed some big clubs. He's been around, as you say, not all successful, but what is indisputable is that Fulham are getting a very, very experienced manager and somebody who knows the Premier League as well.
It's the same thing every year. When a club's struggling near the bottom, what's the first word people talk about is experience. So then we talk about, you look at the managers that were linked to the Fulham job before Ranieri and Sally Jokanovic lost his job, Sam Allardyce, Steve Bruce, managers that have been in the Premier League and done it. And that's where clubs, with that fear of failure, that fear of losing that money in relegation, they always look for that first word experience, and Claudio fits into that massively.
But can this team fundamentally defend?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment, right? So ultimately, I mean, look at the first 3 fixtures he has too, by the way. Good luck, right? With the third one being at Leicester. I'm just saying...
The first one's against Southampton, though, isn't it? I mean, that's
doable.
Yeah, that's a massive game.
But Chelsea,
Here they are.
Leicester, Manchester United... Yeah. You know, I look at those and I say, okay, fine, I get it. But you've got to also have the tools to fundamentally change the complete concept of a team and say, pragmatically, we're going to defend first. This is the exact team that won the championship, not defending.
Playoff final, didn't win it.
Okay.
Playoff final.
I think it's a fascinating point that Liam makes about the ambition that they showed, bringing in players, not sticking with changing the dynamic, really, that they had getting them up. Because I know Neil Warnock a little bit, and I know that he and Cardiff went the opposite way. They stuck rigidly, I think. He was very keen to stick with what he had. Obviously, they bought players, but not as many as Fulham. He was extremely keen to keep the spirit. And I think at the lower end, you know you're going to be at the lower end of the league. He was keen to keep the spirit because the spirit was key.
Look at what Brighton... Sorry to interrupt you, Ollie. Look at Brighton and Bournemouth. They've done exactly that. They've stayed with the nucleus and they've been very, very careful. I always remember what Arsene Wenger used to say. He used to say, it is entirely possible to subtract by adding.
Definitely.
And when you bring somebody into the group, you lose that
whole
dynamic.
different environment.
Especially 12 players.
But also with Fulham, you know, let's be honest, they're only 4 points from safety.
Exactly.
They're not cut adrift by any means.
I think it was more, like I said, I think it's the manner of the performances. I think Bournemouth at home, again, they were wide open in that game. Bournemouth could have scored 6 or 7 in transition against them. And that's when you are looking at the manager then to say, OK, you played this brand of football, it's been very expansive, been great to watch, been winning games. Can you adapt? And I think they tried to give Slavisa time to adapt his way of playing. The fullbacks were very high. The centre-halves are defended so isolated in that game. Callum Wilson was running riot in behind them. Now, for me, it's a manager's job. Yes, you have... I think it's key to have a fundamental philosophy and way of play, but you need to be able to adapt it. And now they've had to go away from that. And Claudio Ranieri, where did he get his success at Leicester? 2 banks of 4, Vardy up front, play in transition, play on the counter-attack. And that's the way Fulham will have to go now, because that's the way that he's got...
midfielder, by the way.
Yeah, well, everywhere he goes, teams win. If he could get an N'Golo Kante now, I'd be delighted. But you look at Anguissa, Seri, they've signed, they were looking for those types of players. When you throw players in, 7, 8 players in together, it's not going to work straight away, especially when you've got players that have played well, performed well. Their dream is to play in the Premier League. All of a sudden, that's taken away from them. I'm telling you that in the training ground, that's causing friction. Those players, what's the point of me working so hard for years to try and get in the Premier League? We get there, all of a sudden the club goes and spends 100 million on 12 players that don't know the culture of the club, don't know the way that we play. Then you have a manager trying to fit these players into a... Jokanovic has a very fundamental way of playing. It takes time. It took him 2 years to get Fulham promoted playing that way. You can't throw players into that and expect them just all of a sudden to mesh in and have a massive success of playing in what is one of the hardest leagues in the world.
Presumably, Ollie, as well, Claudio Ranieri will have signed up for the fact that he won't necessarily be the person overseeing players coming and going.
Yeah, which is interesting because I think we're, even with this, the way that we are reacting to the fact that maybe Jokanovic didn't have the final say on players that came in, we're still incredibly suspicious in this country, I think, about that duality, the system with the director of football or a director of recruitment, whatever you want to call it, and the manager. I think it sits ill with us still, and I think there's something about our national character or our national league that we struggle with that duality. We're still slightly wedded, I think, to the idea of the manager as a patriarchal figure who is in charge of everything. We don't like... we're suspicious inherently, I think, of a kind of duality.
But regardless of the model, whether you have a manager and a sporting director and head coach, the key thing is synergy and transparency.
They're on the same page.
They're on the same page, and that's where you go down that identity, and everyone goes, why does everyone talk about clubs having identity? You have an identity because it helps you with recruitment, it helps you with your way of play, helps you with your academy, bringing players through to play in the first team. So whether you have a sporting director and a head coach, they need to have the same principles of football for it to work. And at Fulham, they're very big on analytics. I know that Slavisa in the past, even in the Championship, was frustrated at times with the way that recruitment was going. And for me, they've gone out, and a lot of their signings were made on deadline. I think they made 5 signings on deadline day. For me, that smells of panic. That smells of let's get players in. And then that next day, I'm telling you, going into that training ground, it would have been so hard to get everyone together and say, right, this is the way we're going to go.
Which also begs the question, why does it smell of panic, though? Because, I mean, they had such a fantastic end to last season. I mean, I can't remember what it was, 23, something like 23, wasn't it, without defeat.
They were outstanding. They were outstanding.
You know, they beat Villa in the playoff final. I mean, you know, they had a great end to the season. They should have been on the... There's no need for panic.